right. Well, today we are discussing my book club pick, which is Sistersong by Lucy Holland. This is a retelling of a British folk ballad called The Twa Sisters, sort of situating on three different sisters. And there's a bit of magic and a little bit of politics, and lots of interesting, I said, navigation of different themes, which I'm sure we'll talk about as well. But just to start it off, I gotta say, I did take my time with it, and I'm glad I did, because it was quite interesting. It's not something that I would say you could read within a day, because um, some bits might be a little bit difficult to run through. But I thought the character development was great. The world building was really interesting in terms of where they get the magic from the land and all of that. And overall, I quite liked it. So that's my 2 cents, and I'm sure we'll go a little bit more into it. But I'll start with Elizabeth as the next person.
Your
Yes,
brave
Elizabeth?
soul, Liv. Um, I I found it somewhat mediocre. I found the characters underdeveloped. I found some of it anachronistic, and a bit predictable, but somehow it still managed to keep me until the end. So I guess that it has uh, that it had a good sense of drama at least.
Beautiful. Thanks, Elizabeth. How about you, Kirsten?
I quite enjoyed it. I found that I listened to the audiobook. I think the audiobook was very good. Especially the song part at the end. They did such a good job of that. I agree with Elizabeth, it was quite predictable. Like I saw things coming a long way off, but you could say that a lot about a lot of things. I thought the characters were interesting. I liked the set. I do like this kind of time period as a setting, so I enjoyed that. But yeah, we can get into more detail later, but it was good. I didn't like the ending. There was some issues I had with the ending.
Yeah.
I think I would have enjoyed it a lot more if it had a different ending, but that's yeah.
Oh.
Sort of get you there. What about you, Shane?
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I found it really quickly engaging, which was a little surprising. But like the first couple of pages, I was like, "Oh, cool! I like these people, and I want to see what they're up to." Unfortunately, that didn't hold through the late middle of the book, and I was like a bit frustrated with some of their actions or their failure to take action, particularly when the eldest and youngest sort of got stuck in interactions that just felt like they kept recurring. But overall, I found the story enjoyable, and the setting was interesting as it goes. So no, I had a good fun read.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, like looking back at the ballad, it's actually really only about the eldest and the youngest sister. I don't think the middle one is in there. And if you look across all three sisters, I think the middle one, Keen, has the most development. I don't know what you guys found about that one.
I liked reading his chapters better than the others.
Yeah.
It was one of those ones where when it, how, because it had the characters' names at the beginning of the chapters. When it was Keen's chapters, I was like, oh, good. Like, I don't know whether that was because I think we started with him.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
and kind of finished.
Maybe I connected to him first because he was the first character that we got. I don't know, but I did enjoy listening to his chapters more than the other two.
I would contend that Keen was the most well-developed character in the book, so I don't find that at all surprising.
Yeah. Because it was interesting, sort of like identity, like exploring the themes of identity and how they didn't feel like they fitted in the scope of what people thought they were. And of course, feeling like that they're a man and all of that. So that was a really interesting journey with that. But I quite liked Reva initially too, but then I found that she's towards the end, especially when Tristan came into the picture, I went, oh, okay.
I mean, that's kind of early.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As soon as she met Tristan, like it was all downhill from there. I'm like, ugh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I was hoping that she would realize, like, that was the biggest thing I had the problem with the ending, was that she never really realized that he was not a good guy, and she stayed in love with him right to the end. And I was like, why?
Yeah, especially when faced with like the absolute consequences. Like people have died, people she knows have died.
Yeah.
But it doesn't seem to register at all with her.
Yeah. And even that bit where Danae dies, sort of initially, I had to reread that bit a bit and that bit a little bit to go, oh, she did let go of her. She didn't pick her up. Oh, what a
She
nice
didn't
sister.
she didn't push her, but she didn't try to catch her or stop her from falling.
That's what it meant, yeah. So she accidentally, from my understanding, it seems like she screamed that sort of Sine got caught and started to fall off the cliff, but then she didn't help her bring her back up. But that whole Sine ending thing just didn't. It just felt a bit weird, with her turning into, what is it, a harp?
A harp.
Yeah.
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 I got to
Yeah.
that bit and I was like, God, I hope Mel's not reading this. Because
Yeah.
it was pretty gruesome. The bit when that was
Mm.
like carving her up and turning her into a harp. I was like, bloody hell, this is taking a turn.
Yeah. I think
Yeah.
those two characters, and hello, smiley face there. I think those two characters, and possibly the story itself as well, got too trapped in the ballad, and
Yeah.
there wasn't much else going on at that from
Yeah.
there. Which I don't know. There was a lot of sort of internal monologue between them about their their place and Tristan and what to do, but it wasn't going anywhere, I think, while the steps of the ballad were coming through.
Yeah. And even when Sine's, I don't know how they pronounced it in the audiobook, but
Yeah, Kirsten, can we get a quick primer on pronunciation of
Cena.
names?
They pronounced it Cena in the
Cena.
audio,
Yeah.
but then there's a line late in the
Yeah.
story where what's the other girl's name? I forgot.
Reva.
Reva when she's all upset and she goes to say her name and she breaks the name into pieces and it says that it sounded like sin, which makes me think, well, shouldn't it be sinner, not Cena? But the audiobook person said Cena the whole way through, and the only reason I knew that's not how it was spelled was because the chapters are named by the characters and it came up on my little screen in my car with the names of the people. And I was like, oh, that's not how I would have said that. I'm glad that I heard that. Yeah. So I don't know how correct the audiobook person is, but that's how they said it.
Mm.
Be inclined to go with your pronunciation, Liv.
Sinner.
Not based on Sine, yeah. Not
In that she's a natural sinner. No,
well, I mean, like Reva is also a bit on the nose.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
She frustrated me a lot. Like, I liked her a lot at the beginning, and then like I got why she was so frustrated by the way that everybody pitied her and treated her, and by like this idea that she's only useful to get married, but nobody wants to marry her because she's burned and got scars and stuff. And I get why she was so angry, but also like really hated Tristan, and like she just I don't know. I don't understand what, like, both of the girls going after this guy, and I was like, I don't get it. I don't see the appeal.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, I suppose the dynamic between her and Tristan could be about her accepting her scars, and they sort of started towards that, but then, yeah, interesting.
I was
You go, Shane, sorry.
even like I knew straight away as soon as they showed him that hole in the whatever it was.
Oh yeah.
I knew that he was going to betray
Mm.
the minute she told him about that. But I was angry with him because he is sleeping with her and not wanting to marry her. And I'm like, but you know what the consequences for that are.
Yeah.
Like you know that what's going to happen to her if she gets pregnant out of wedlock. You know that there's the consequence of that. You know that that's pretty much going to happen. So I was just really pissed off about that because
Well, I think one thing that surprised me was that that in the end it seemed like he did love her, because he shows
Yeah.
absolutely no sign of that throughout the whole thing. Like, all of his actions could be construed as he's just using her to like get inside the castle and conquer his enemies, basically. So I found that his love for her in the end was unconvincing, and that he would just pick everything up and then go once he'd gotten to her. I'm like, it's kind of like in the superhero movies where you defeat the boss and all the minions fall dead as well. Like, it's just
Yeah.
like, really?
Yeah, I agree. I didn't think he showed any actual care for her
Yeah.
apart from lust.
Mm.
And like
Mm.
he wasn't worried about what would happen to her if he left. He wasn't worried about how she emotionally would deal with the fact that he wasn't worried about the fact that he was lying to her or that he was going to be betraying her, basically. He didn't, I don't know, I just didn't get any vibes at all from him that he seemed to care about her genuinely until that last scene when she was threatening to kill herself. And I was actually surprised that he reacted well to the fact that she was pregnant instead of being angry about it, because I was totally expecting that. But
I mean, he seems like the kind of guy who would.
that's what I mean. Like,
Mm.
yeah, like this is your fault, even though it's like, hello, how? But anyway, I was just, and the ending of her going off with him, really, that was the part that I really didn't like. And the part with the other part of the ending that I didn't like was, okay, the other girl is a harp now. Okay.
What is this?
Mm.
Even with like Cine, I suppose they're talking about her that she wants to go on adventures and all of that. But thought the relationship with Osred, could have turned into something really interesting. And a good part of her character development, but it sort of got to a point and then it sort of fell off a cliff.
Mm-hmm.
And then they made it seem
No
that
pun
they were in
intended.
this good partnership when she became the heart, but I couldn't really believe it at the end with that.
I really enjoyed him as a character. He was interesting, but
Mm.
I
Yeah.
didn't really get
I
enough of him.
I was a little disappointed that he wasn't mentioned in the end.
Yeah.
Like, they recover her as a harp and they bring her home, but we don't know what happened to him. And I felt a bit sad about that, because he was an interesting character and a good person. But a big kind of scary looking guy who can't speak walking around with a bone harp is not going to come to a good end. Like, people are going to freak out and it's just not going to end well.
I sort of interpreted that he was there at the end, but he wasn't mentioned. He was just this figure. So maybe I misinterpreted. I know at the end it was just the harp, Constantine, and Meriden. So I don't know where he was, but I thought he was sort of prior to that. I don't know. Yeah. Interpretation, yeah.
Yeah, I would have been very happy to watch entire chapters of the adventures of Cine and Osred.
Yeah.
And I wonder if I would have liked the book more if he was more of a viewpoint character, or if his choices and her choices were more relevant.
Mm.
I wanted to go back
I,
to what we were saying about Tristan's response to finding out Reva was pregnant. That was a surprise. I agree. There hadn't been much human feeling from him in the book. I can't remember, and I wasn't sure if we were meant to read that as culturally that he was just keen on having someone pregnant, on going to have a son and carry on his line or whatever. Seemed like it could be as much that as any actual connection to her.
Because he did say, "Oh, you're carrying my son," and she's like, "It could be a daughter." Like he doesn't even think of that.
Right. Nonsense.
Yeah. Side tangent on that one. Also, Tristan's name kept throwing me off, especially like in the beginning. Like after a while, it became clear the trajectory of his character. But given that we're kind of in this milieu of Arthurian legend, Tristan and Isolde is a very famous Arthurian legend. So I was kind of half expecting that he'd rescue Eva and take her back to the castle, and then be like she'd be betrothed to his lord, and he'd have to escort her back, which is the legend of Tristan and Isolde. But yeah, obviously not. But even after it was clear, like the trajectory of his character, I kind of kept stumbling on that a little bit.
It seemed like it doesn't really seem to fit very well with the other names, even the other names of the Saxons, does it? I think.
Well, it wasn't
Oh, he
his
was
name in
pretending
the end.
either.
Yeah.
No, he was pretending not to be Saxon. That's right. Even the other.
Well, yeah, Tristan was not his Saxon name.
I can't remember what his actual name was now.
Began with C.
Cynric.
Cynric, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Rescue. Yeah, and kind of on that idea of Arthurian legend, I actually if you're looking for querying of Arthurian legend, I have a better recommendation. And that is Spear by Nicola Griffith, which is a novella, and it kind of does a retelling of some of the legend of Percival. But Percival is a woman, and bunches of the cast are queer and diverse. I think Lancelot is brown, disabled, bisexual guy. So it does better in terms of the diversity on a number of scales. But yeah, definitely highly recommend that one if you're looking for something that is in a similar vein. But yeah. Although I would argue in Spear, the character of Percival is not trans. She's just a queer woman who dresses as a man for practicality, rather than being genuinely trans like Keen is, which is probably, I felt, the biggest strength of this book was Keen and his arc.
Yep.
Yeah, agreed.
I think when I think about the character development, it's linking back to Keen, because I found that such a great plot line, and I don't know, it was really interesting to learn about Keen. And also sort of their interactions with Meriden or Merlin as well, because I think Meriden initially sort of shows to themselves as a woman as Maury, but then it's sort of like, I wouldn't say they're necessarily trans in that sense, but it's like a flexible.
It was more gender fluid kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I thought that part of the book was really interesting in that aspect, and I wish Meriden. I feel the concept of Meriden sort of became less and less important across the book as well too. It was really interesting at the start, but I don't know how to explain it, but
it's kind of like the Gandalf phenomenon, really. You can't have someone that powerful around the whole time, because then the hero can't be the hero, if that
Mhm.
makes sense. I was a bit surprised that they went with Maury and not full Morgan, like you might have expected.
I like the horse was Nimue.
Indeed,
Yeah,
yeah.
Mm.
yeah. So yeah, little bits of hints back to Merlin with that one. And then I suppose the dynamic with Gildas
No.
was interesting too, who I initially really didn't like, but then found a bit more fascinating across the book. Especially when he was like, "Nah, Tristan, you're a baddie."
Yeah.
Yeah, that was. I don't think so that like you can say that he was doing that out of the goodness of his heart. That was just
Oh no.
him looking out for his own self-interest. It was interesting, I suppose, to have like a foil figure for Merlin, let's say, in that sense. I think that was useful. It was kind
Yeah.
Gildas was more Merlin's antagonist rather than like Keen and Tristan, let's say.
Yeah. I suppose when their connection to the land became more and more powerful, Gildas wasn't as powerful too. But I like how they sort of flagged him for what he was. He's not actually getting divine intervention. He's just a magician. Yeah.
I did expect, this is something I said it was predictable, but I did kind of expect him to be more of an antagonist than he was. Like when I first started reading, I was like, oh, this guy's going to be the big bad, basically. But he kind of fizzled out a bit and wasn't as much of a problem as I expected him to be.
Mhm.
Honestly, I was a little surprised they didn't try and burn Reaver at the stake. Like,
Same. Or even Keen when they were, you know,
Mm.
there
But-
was some magical stuff that he was doing that I was like, you're gonna get in fucking trouble.
yeah, but Reaver had the patterning for it because she'd had the burns before and the fear of fire. Therefore, it seemed like the patterning had been laid there for a burning at the stake as a healer there.
Yeah.
So that was a little, and in some senses, you've also got the patterning there for the foiling of it because Keen has, jumped through the fire at Beltane. And both Merlin and Gildas had been playing with the Beltane fires as well.
That would have been good for foreshadowing and maybe
pay off and things.
I don't know. Maybe they changed it at the last minute for being too predictable or anachronistic, perhaps.
Yucky.
I did see it coming right from the beginning that it was Cena or whatever her name was that caused Reaver's injuries. I was pleasantly surprised that it was an accident because originally I was like, oh, she might turn out to be the bad one and that she's done it on purpose.
There's always one.
So I was kind of glad that it turned out that it was just like this power that she couldn't control and she didn't mean to do it and she hadn't remembered about it. But I had seen it the second they said she saw a figure or something. I was like, all right, that's what that is. Like I knew it was her from the beginning. But yeah, I was kind of glad that it turned out that it wasn't intentional.
Yeah.
Actually, you've reminded me of another book that this reminded me of, and that was Daughters of the Storm by Kim Wilkins, I think it is. And it's set in a similar time period, and there are 5 sisters in that one, but you still have like the Christian one, the warrior, the healer, the magician, and that sort of thing. So in some senses, yeah, this felt very, and that I think was one of the big reasons that this felt very treading same ground, if that makes sense.
Mm.
They've just kind of compressed it into 3 sisters instead of 5, I think it was. So, sorry,
wonder if
Shane,
they
I
were
think I
aware.
interrupted.
I was just going to say about seeing it. I didn't pick that it was particularly early, but I I did know that well before it came up between Reva and Cinna, and
Mm.
I've been wondering if that undercut the climax of the book or gave it a funny, like it played out a bit funny because it's a huge moment when Cena finds out. Who's the last one to find out? Cena finds
Reva.
out
Reva.
that,
Reva.
right, Cena
Reva's last.
realizes and then Reva finds out Cena caused it. And I'm like, that's big for that character, but I already know, and so I'm not having a
Mm.
realization here. And I wasn't really. I think I was just confused by Reva being so stuck on Tristan at that point that it was hard to connect to her
Yeah.
and where she was anyway. And so, yeah, there's a person having a realization that's really powerful for them that I can't like connect to, which is the whole big thing in the book.
Yeah.
I also found, going back to Gildas and Christianity and the new religion, the whole conversion all the way through felt a bit frustrating and a bit confused for me since their old traditions seemed so clearly powerful. Like they had
Mm.
a druid king who could absolutely have all these material benefits and they were famous for them. And Gildas offered, I really don't see what.
Yeah. It
The
wasn't
queen.
very convincing that why he was so like it's understandable why he believed it because they mentioned about the church grabs people when they're young and indoctrinates them early, but this town full of people didn't have that, and
Yep.
they had plenty of reasons to continue believing in their own gods, and
Yep.
it's just this one dude that shows up like. Yeah, it wasn't very convincing. I was expecting there to be some kind of revelation later on about why the mother, because I feel like a lot of the townspeople were following because the queen believed it,
Hmm.
but there was not really a lot of that. I was expecting there to be some reason why she had started following him, and that was never explained. Like, why if
Yeah.
her husband's so powerful and he can do all these things, why does she suddenly believe in this other guy?
Right.
Well, they
That-
kind of
I
implied
think
that
it's
she had Roman heritage, and that's
Yeah,
why.
yeah.
That
yeah.
the worship of the land is not necessarily one that her lineage is connected to necessarily. And if you think if it was a
Sure.
political marriage, then like
Yeah.
it makes sense that she would bring her ways with it. But like on the whole, I agree with your point.
That would have,
Go
no,
ahead,
sorry.
Shane.
That would have been interesting to have like that clear understanding of like she came and she brought a priest and it's something that you don't want to interrupt because so that it's familiar. They also mentioned that the king was changing to be able to stay connected to the other tribes around. More and more of
Mm.
their trading partners were Christian. But yeah, it just seemed like clearly a worse deal. And Reva's conversion in the forest was a bit hard to connect to too. Like she thought about Jesus just before she found her way to the edge of the forest, or just before she found the wisp, I think it was.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't stick though, which
Yeah,
is
no.
Yeah.
curious as to why it was there at all, if that makes sense.
Mm.
I don't know. Yeah, I agree with you, Shane. But
think
go on, Liv.
I think with Kador, the king, we probably should have connected it more to the wife and why he gave it up because you can see he was powerful. There was harvest aplenty, all of that. And I know we put in things like it's connected to his wife and it's connected to being more in line with the other kingdoms and all of that. But I would have probably want to see more from the emotional side in terms
Mm.
of his wife. And I could see across the book that you would think that she would have a bit more hold over him, but she didn't necessarily do have that as much. Or you couldn't really see that connection that he truly loved her, or like just little bit extra just to make it a little bit more believable, I suppose.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you on the emotional angle. I feel like we did see that she had hold over him, but she's also pushing against the weight of what he had, if that makes sense.
Mm.
And also like the societal mores around the role of women, I suppose. More to the point, I think more relevantly for the themes of the book, is that one of the pieces of anachronism that I found was the festivals that they celebrated, because that is a modern invention and unlikely to have be celebrated at that particular time period.
I didn't know that.
It's the 8 festivals as they're kind of presented in the book is basically kind of put together in the 1940s by Gerald Gardner, so it's quite recent, relatively speaking. I think that scholarship basically favors the idea that the Celts celebrated the 4 sort of cross-quarter festivals, so like Beltane and Samhain and
Yule?
no,
Really?
not Yule.
So
But
how old is Yule? Because I've read other books that had Yule in it, and I don't know how.
Yule's not a cross-quarter festival; it's a solstice, and the celebration of the solstices and equinoxes was something more attributed to the Anglo-Saxons, which are the people that came to conquer in the book. But that division is a little neat to my mind. And I think as it goes, the thinking is that different places would celebrate different festivals kind of around, so they might do this one and this one and this one sort of thing, but to have all 8 together is a modern thing.
Did not know that.
So that is
That's
one
cool.
place where I found it a bit anachronistic. And also for a story that pays lip service to the land for the magic, there is no relationship there, and the land is as undeveloped as some of the other characters. They take the magic, and there's no kind of sense that they're giving back much. Like Keen has a dance, and that's kind of about it. So I did find it not well representative, I think, of what it was trying to achieve.
Yeah, Keen even said at one point that magic has a cost, and I was like, we didn't really see that. We didn't really I mean, apart from unless he was kind of talking about how gruesome it was, the thing that they did with Cinna's body, but like that was just like gross. It wasn't really they didn't really have a price that they had to pay, you know?
Yeah.
Like,
I mean,
Their souls.
Keen
I
does get
guess.
tired when
I
he's
guess so.
doing the big
That's
things,
true.
the big things, like calling down lightning and stuff, like sure. But on the whole, I think your point is a good one, Kirsten. We didn't really see much of a cost.
On the on both those things, like the understanding the magic and their world, and on Liv, you'd said before, understanding Kador and his choices and his changes. A dynamic I liked in the book was how for the 3 kids, their parents were a complete black box, and the world outside their little women's hall was like they had very little understanding, and they had a tiny bit of understanding of each other. And that actually was quite a nice dynamic to read about these three sort of supporting each other and trying to figure out how the world worked and things.
Mm,
But it does leave us with like, okay, but why is he doing that? Like, I can't see any reason why. We've come up with a few possibilities, but it just leaves it, yeah, how does this world work? How does the magic work?
And I
mm,
think too, like actually your point kind of makes me think, it makes me appreciate again like the strong support that the sisters had for each other in the beginning.
In the
mm,
beginning.
And even further down the track where Sine is quick to accept Keen as a man. It's like,
Mm,
yeah, that makes sense of what I know of Keen, and
yeah.
he's always been like this. Um, and speaking of them that way was
mm.
really nice.
Yep.
I thought, and a good.
Yeah, I agree. I like that, like, when was it Gwen, the girl that King was into?
Yeah,
I think
Gwen.
so, yeah.
When she said he, Cinna was like, oh yeah, I've kind of been thinking of him as he in my head. It's just I haven't heard it said out loud before. But she's like, yeah, no, that tracks. I get it. Like, and then she just like I did like the way that she reacted to that.
Mm,
And I feel like
yeah,
it
very
kind of
much.
connects in with her role as the seer, and seeing existing patterns and things. Um, yeah, and it made her a more likable character.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
there was quite a few parts of her character that were not likable.
Yeah, she was pretty bratty.
So they I think the author did strike a good balance of like painting her as like this flighty, and she's the youngest and probably the most, silliest, but you could easily kind of hate her, but they kind of put enough into that character that made you not hate her,
Mm,
because I think she could have easily been hateable,
yep.
Yeah.
but I didn't. I was annoyed with her about how jealous she was about Tristan, but that was partly because I was like, God, what is wrong with you two? Like, what?
Yep. For
Too old
sure.
for this.
I did like that narrative trick of her having a vision of her true love and her
Mm,
wild whirlwind romance, and then going, "Oh, hang on, no, that's not me at all. Whoops."
yeah.
Um,
And I think that was her problem, was that she'd built this up in her mind of being this thing, and then I think that was actually what it was why she liked him, wasn't actually because of him, was because she had built up this idea in her head that she'd seen this vision and that was what was going to be.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I feel like it showed some growth that she recognized eventually that it wasn't hers. Like she
Mm,
could have just gone on thinking that he was meant to be for her, but figured out in the end that she must have been seeing through Reva's eyes.
that was one of the
mm,
things that annoyed me, actually, because she seemed to have that revelation, but then they went, like, it's almost like she went backwards when they had the confrontation when she ended up in the river, was because she then got jealous again, and it was like, I thought you'd moved on from this. I thought you'd realized that it wasn't your vision, and that, but then she actually does say that she's jealous, and I'm like, why? I don't, like, and like she actually did say at one point that she was more jealous of that Reva got the adventure that she wanted rather than the actual man.
mm.
She wanted to have that story. She wanted to have the I got rescued and then we fell in love and blah blah blah. And it was more about the whole idea of it than actually him.
Yeah,
But
because I think she reeled from him towards the end, especially when Osred wasn't entirely happy with him.
oh yeah.
Yeah.
After the thing with the rose, I think she started realizing that, like, okay, this guy's not actually nice. But then they had that big confrontation. They got so angry with each other.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. I was going to say, like, she had the realization, and I thought that was a cool realization, and it's a bit frustrating that I think that didn't do anything in the story. She didn't take any action from that I remember.
Mm,
Um,
yeah.
and then, like you say, yes, she has that same position in the argument the next time it comes up. But,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I get that a lot of that was just defensiveness of being upset that Reva found out that she was the one that hurt her, and she was, you know, probably not thinking straight, but
Right, have to defend myself. And then Doylist, the author's building towards this ballad. And
I guess
yeah.
that's a good point too.
I think
Sorry, I was just going to ask, did you folks know the ballad going in, and did that affect the read of the book at all?
I've heard the title
No.
before, but I wasn't familiar with it.
I don't know it at all.
So it's about these two sisters, and one of them falls in a river and dies and gets turned into a harp.
Oh, actually, that's where I've T. Kingfisher has done some playing around with this particular
Oh.
ballad in one of the books that Book Club has read before. Oh, someone jog my memory, because I always think of the Defensive Art of Baking.
I think that's the only T. Kingfisher I've actually read, so I can't.
It's not that one, though. I know it's not.
think
Is
it's
it the
not
short
sorted.
story collection?
No, it wasn't the short story collection. It was like a different novella or something. I'm so sorry. The title of this one never sticks in my mind. I will see if I can look it up. But yeah, because she's done some messing around with the bone harp before, so I was familiar with that particular trope. But I'm not actually familiar with the ballad itself.
Yeah, I think leading back to what you said, I suppose at the start, Shane, it felt like they were those two characters, Reva and Cine, were trapped by the ballad and sort of beholden to that. I think there's ways where you could have played with it that it didn't feel so flat. But I don't know.
The book title is Minor Mage. Yeah.
Minor Mage. Nice one. Guy Gavriel Kay would have told me the ballad in the second chapter and had me bawling my eyes out about it by the 5th chapter and on to the end of the book, I reckon.
Do you like Guy Gavriel Kay?
I moderately fond. Yeah, no, I adore some of those.
I did like the reveal of the ballad towards the end. I'm not sure how it went in terms of an audible.
It was excellent. It was so good. Like sometimes when they sing songs in an audiobook, they kind of don't really make it have a tune, or the person can't really sing. This was really, really well done. Like it had a proper, like the way that they did the sing, like it was actually sung, and the person who was doing it had a beautiful voice, and then having the little snippets of dialogue in between. It was great. I was like, wow, I'm so glad I listened to the audiobook just from that section.
Did it sound like, so they had the person singing the ballad, and then did it sound like she almost was trapped when she was like, when they had the dialogue next to it?
Yeah, I think they did a pretty good job of that. I could tell what was going on. What chapter was that? I'll see if I can find it.
Towards the end.
Yeah, I knew it was towards the end. But...
Yeah, let's have a look.
Someone who's got the actual. Is it chapter 46?
Going through the book right now. Oh, nope, that's not it. Oh, okay. So it is.
Wait a minute. I've got that playing.
Chapter 41.
Mel says don't play it in the recording for recording reasons, probably.
Okay.
We could beep it out while we play it, Mel.
I could play it for you guys after
we don't edit.
But yeah, it felt it was quite creepy in a way.
It was quite beautiful in the audiobook, the way they sang it. It was still creepy, but it was like the actual singing was really nice. I really liked liked it anyway. I'm not a very musical person, so someone who's more musical might be like, oh, that was not quite good, but I thought it was good.
Nice. A cool idea, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Did we?
I
I'm personally really bad when it comes to when they tell like folklore stories within books and connecting it to the themes of the, because I just read for it, go, "Ah, it's a thing." It's not my favorite thing in the world, but did you find that it sort of were you able to connect it to the plot lines of the book? So there was one about Herla and one about Lear, I think.
I'd forgotten about the Lear one until they started calling back to it, and then I was like, oh damn, I should have listened to that more carefully. That was the only problem with it being audio, was that I wanted to go back and reread to connect it up to the story better. Like, I was like, if this was in a book, I would have probably reread it, like gone over it more than once, but I didn't. I mean, I could have rewound the audio, but I didn't bother. But yeah, I did. There was a few little parts that I was like, oh yeah, that matches up to this and that matches up to this. But I think that would have been easier to like connect the dots if it was on paper rather than listening.
Go ahead, Shane.
Yeah.
I didn't really connect how the stories. So there was the children of Lear being too arrogant, and I can't remember the other big story. I didn't really connect to how they played into this story, but I really love that the stories were that important. That feels like a very believable part of this world where bards and storytellers, from the bit I understand, make a big difference culturally. And when they draw that connection. And so I think Keen in particular kept remembering those stories.
Mm.
And I kind of liked,
Cine
or was it Cine as much or
was
more?
quite.
Right.
I mean, Keen actually told one. Told
Yeah, that's right.
the second one, the one that I can't remember,
Herla one. Yeah.
because Merlin told the Sons of Lear. And I mean, I feel like that had a fairly straightforward connection to the story in that it's personifying the land, and also I suppose you can see it as like a foreshadowing of the drowning that happens later. But the second one escapes me entirely. I cannot remember for the life of me what it was.
The one that Keen told.
Yeah.
It's escaping me as well now.
There was something about Herla, but
Herla and
again,
the wedding.
Oh, right. Of
Well done, well
course.
done.
oh, that's
Yes.
very good. Do you
Nice
think that maybe
moment.
relates to the Reaver thing with her and Tristan? I don't know. I'm really
mess
bad. I
around.
tend to like skip through those bits very quickly.
Yeah, likewise. I do feel I can't really make much of a connection with her that I can think of, which inclines me to think that it is mostly there to pave the way for the ballad at the end.
He was the one that went into the gnome place and then was stuck
The
for
Dwarven Kingdom, yeah.
and was like came back out and it was hundreds of years later.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, fairly standard folklore story. Maybe a bit self-indulgent on the author's part.
Maybe it was more about Keen coming into his sort of role as being like more like the wizard, whatever his name was. I forgot his name because you guys are saying it different to the audiobook name, and now I can't remember how I had it in my head.
Maury Murden.
Yeah,
Maury Meriden.
I think it was Morden in the
Morden.
audio, something like that. But the way you're saying it sounds like it makes more sense to me. But anyway,
Well,
maybe that was what that scene was more about, was that everybody listening to Keen and sort of seeing him differently, and that was not less about the story and more about him as a storyteller. I don't know.
Yeah, but I mean, things should things should always do multiple things in a story. So if you're going to have someone prove their chops by being a storyteller, make it a story that is relevant.
Yeah.
Also, Morden, as it is spelled, that is a Celtic version of the name Merlin. It's
Yeah.
pretty well
That's why I'm
established.
saying I feel like the audiobook person, like I don't think Cena is quite right for that either. So I'm thinking that maybe they're not necessarily, and I've heard this from authors before, that like they don't even get to give input to the audiobook narrators about how to pronounce names. So like don't take it as canon kind of thing. So
Sure, yeah.
Which seems so weird. Anyway,
Mm.
I kind of like that I can't directly read a metaphor. I can come up with messages like watch out for other people's traditions, and yeah, don't get tangled up in other people's traditions, or you might come out of a mountain 100 years later. But
No good deed goes unpunished.
also, yeah.
Hmm. Was there anything else?
I think we've covered most things. This one.
I was pleased
Yeah.
that Gwen came around in the end.
Yes.
I mean, not
Mm.
too far down the track. Like, it didn't take too long for her to come around, which was
Yeah.
good because that was pretty terrible to be beginning.
yeah.
I was all ready for Gwen to be the queen alongside
Yes,
Constantine.
that was actually another thing I didn't like about the ending, is that we didn't get any closure about that, because I was like, surely now that Keen's like the king, he can be like, okay, I can get married to her, that's fine.
For sure.
That's my headcanon anyway. So
Well,
She
absolutely.
doesn't have an uncle to tell her what to do anymore. So
Yep.
yeah.
It would have been, in some respects, it would have been made more sense if her father had still been alive to make forge an alliance there.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I mean, the only issue with that is the whole like
attitude of
having an heir being so important at that time thing. Like,
that's true, yeah.
obviously that isn't going to happen, but yeah, I'm like, well, now you're the king, you can just make up the rules and you can just say, well, I'm marrying her anyway.
Adopt, yes.
Mm.
I suppose
Make
they
up
could
some.
go.
Go.
Oh yeah. I suppose they can go, Reva, make more children and I'll have a ward and they'll be my heir.
Yeah, except she's gone off with what's his face.
Yeah.
That was actually part of what I was wondering. I was like, King could get married to Gwen and then they could adopt the baby.
Mm.
No.
Find a child somewhere and make up some magic stuff about it.
Absolutely.
Mm.
Anybody would buy it, it seems.
Yeah, so it was hard to get a read on like the general populace. They seemed to blow whichever way the story needed them to.
There was something nice about in the end they were all like the populace had sort of been backing Gildas, it felt like, in being all judgy of Keen and the old traditions, and somebody's being really judgy and needs a mob behind them, so we're sort of buying into that. And then one of the kids says, well, this really sucks and you're all left hungry and disadvantaged. And they're like, yeah, actually, stuff this. We hate that guy.
We'll put our collective brain cells together and arrive at a sensible conclusion.
Yep.
They just need someone to tell them what to do. It'll be fine.
Yeah.
When you mentioned Elizabeth early about it being quite predictable, I was thinking with a folklore retelling, that's not always a bad thing.
Yeah.
But I don't know that it played so well for me in this book, at least. It didn't have the sort of like beautiful onrushing tragedy of a really good play that where you can see, oh no, I know how this is going to go. And
Yeah, I wonder how much of that is like unfamiliarity with the source material. Like if I'd been, or us collectively had been a bit more familiar with the ballad, whether we would have felt that maybe. Don't
Hmm.
know. But yeah,
Possible.
I take your
Not
point.
sure.
Like predictability in a retelling of anything is not really the game plan, if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah.
Like you're not looking to. Well, sometimes you are. Sometimes people like to change it up and stuff, but it doesn't. It doesn't have to be.
I think it can be predictable, but you just make sure that the emotional plot points
Solid.
are strong and solid.
Yeah.
Like, for example, the confrontation with Sine and Riva towards the end before Sine dies, that was quite flat, and that could have been a very pivotal moment
Yeah.
in the story for this
Yeah.
kind of ballad. Yeah. Yeah.
Cool.
It's been a good chat.
Mhm.
Thank you
Thanks,
for the book.
Liv.
And I had fun reading it. I did really like meeting those characters and their early interactions.
It did suck me in, I
Hmm.
have to say. Reluctantly. Dragged me kicking and screaming in the end.
Yeah, I'm glad I read it, and I'm glad I finally got a book off my bookshelf, a physical one. So I was very happy with that. Now I have to go for all the others.
Is this a Secret Santa one that you had sitting there, or another one that you just bought because it sounded interesting, or?
I honestly don't know when I got it, but I know I got it in Canberra because I bought it at Paper Chain.
Ah,
Good move.
So
Yep.
it's been a number of years. Possibly it's been on my shelf. I was literally just going, I'm feeling like a retelling. What's on my shelf that's a retelling? This one has the best reviews. Let's go with this one. That
fair
was
enough.
the way I went with that one. Yeah,
It's always nice to knock something off your TBR.
all of it. And I think I'm going to read an actual Secret Santa one next.
Ooh.
So I got the familiar to read.
Hmm.
Lee Bardugo?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And I've got it, and I have a pirate book as well, the TBR. I've just literally just put things on my desk of what's gonna be next because
What's the
I'm
pirate
going.
book, Liv?
We should probably wrap up formally and
Yes.
then pursue pirate books after that.
Okay.
Yeah,
What's our next read for the book club?
The
Oh.
next
I
read is
think
The
it's-
Wisteria Society of Lady Scoundrels by a New Zealand author called India Holton.
Awesome.
I've actually read that one. That one's interesting.
Yes, I know.
Is that your pick, Mel?
That is my pick.
Ah,
Lady
cool.
Scoundrels, I'm down.
Sounds good to me.
Sold.
100%.
Enemies to lovers.
All right. Thanks for watching, everybody. Bye.
Bye.